It had been a quiet, almost imperceptible shift in the fabric of our lives, one I had embraced with the gentle conviction that this was simply what partners did. I had chosen, consciously and willingly, to dedicate myself to supporting Igor, my husband, in every conceivable way. This commitment wasn't born of obligation, but of a deep affection and a belief in the unspoken covenant of our shared existence. Our life together, typically a meticulously ordered tapestry woven with intellectual pursuits and quiet routines, harbored a singular, unwavering ritual: Igor's weekly pilgrimage to his parents' village. Each Sunday, without fail, he would embark on the familiar 2-hour drive, a steadfast son tending to the roots of his past. His visits were never merely social calls. They were imbued with purpose, laden with the quiet dignity of duty. He would arrive, a reliable sentinel, ready to lend his strong, capable hands to the myriad of chores that accumulated in his parents' aging farmhouse. Whether it was repairing a creaking fence, tending to the stubbornly resilient garden, or performing the countless small acts of maintenance that keep a home from succumbing to the ravages of time, Igor approached these tasks with a silent diligence that I profoundly admired. And, invariably, nestled securely in a wicker basket on the passenger seat, would be a collection of my homemade preserves. Jars of shimmering berry jam, tangy pickled cucumbers, and rich, aromatic fruit compotes, each one meticulously prepared in our sunlit kitchen, a testament to my own quiet contribution to this familial tradition. I poured my affection into these culinary gifts, knowing they were more than just food. They were a tangible expression of my love, a bridge connecting our urban existence to the rustic simplicity of his parents' world. I found a quiet satisfaction in this ritual, a sense of belonging to a larger, enduring narrative. Anna, a woman whose very being was a testament to the beauty of structure and predictability, found solace and strength in the predictable rhythms of her life. Her world was a meticulously organized haven, a sanctuary she had painstakingly crafted to shelter her spirit from the relentless chaos of the external world. Her apartment, a reflection of her inner landscape, was a symphony of calm. Bookshelves, groaning under the weight of literary classics, cherished companions from centuries past, lined the walls, their spines a vibrant tapestry of knowledge. The subtle, comforting aroma of freshly baked bread, perpetually wafted from her kitchen, mingling with the faint scent of aged paper and blossoming houseplants, creating an atmosphere of harmonious domesticity. This was her universe, a bastion of order and aesthetic pleasure, mirroring her profound love for both harmony and intellectual rigor. She devoted her professional life to literature, shaping young minds as a university professor. Each day, she immersed herself in the profound depths of Tolstoy's sweeping sagas and Dostoevsky's psychological intricacies, navigating the labyrinthine corridors of human experience within their pages. In these timeless narratives, she sought and often found echoes of life's eternal questions, unraveling philosophical quandaries and existential dilemmas with the quiet intensity of a scholar. Igor, her husband, stood in stark, beautiful contrast. He was her absolute antithesis, a man forged in the precise, unambiguous world of engineering. His mind moved in blueprints, calculations, and the unwavering logic of numbers. His reality was one of quantifiable facts and tangible solutions, far removed from the lyrical ambiguities of literature. Yet, this fundamental difference, rather than creating a chasm between them, formed a complementary, almost symbiotic relationship. Anna found immense value in Igor's unwavering reliability, his calm practicality in the face of problems, and the quiet, yet profoundly sincere, care he extended to her. He was her anchor, a steady presence in a world she often perceived as fluid and unpredictable. Igor, in turn, revered her erudition, her exquisitely refined sense of beauty, and her remarkable ability to unearth profound joy in the simplest, most ephemeral moments of life. He admired her capacity to imbue the mundane with magic, to see the world through a poet's eye. The Sunday trips to his parents' village had long been an unspoken ritual, a deeply ingrained thread in the tapestry of their shared life. It was more than just a visit, it was a pilgrimage, a reaffirmation of familial bonds and ancestral ties. Igor would dedicate himself to the household tasks, his strong hands mending fences, tending the sprawling garden, and performing the countless small acts of maintenance that kept the old homestead thriving. Anna, with meticulous care and boundless affection, always prepared a substantial bag of provisions for him to take. Jars of her homemade pickled vegetables, savory soups simmered to perfection, succulent cutlets, and an assortment of sweet and savory pies, each item a labor of love. She knew, without a shadow of a doubt, that Igor's parents cherished her cooking, finding immense delight in her culinary artistry. And for Anna, the act of doing something kind, something tangible and nourishing for them, brought a quiet, profound joy that resonated deep within her soul. Igor would return in the evening, a familiar silhouette against the setting sun, a little wary perhaps, but invariably content. He would recount the day's happenings, tales of his parents' well-being, fragments of village gossip exchanged over mugs of tea, and detailed observations about the capricious weather. Anna would listen, an attentive and empathetic audience, her head nodding gently in understanding, her thoughtful questions guiding the flow of their conversation. These Sunday excursions, with their inherent simplicity and deep-rooted traditions, had always felt like a small, precious journey to another world for both of them, a realm of tranquil silence, profound peace, and the uncomplicated beauty of simple pleasures. They were moments of grounding, a brief respite from the demanding intellectual currents of their city lives. Lately, however, a subtle shift had occurred, one that Anna, with her keen observational faculties, couldn't ignore. She had begun to observe her husband with a renewed, almost diagnostic intensity. He seemed preoccupied, a silent burden weighing on his spirit. It wasn't that his attentiveness to her had waned, far from it. He still performed the small, cherished acts of devotion, bringing her freshly brewed coffee in the quiet solitude of the morning, inquiring earnestly about the intricacies of her day, and reading her beloved poetry in the hushed intimacy of their bedroom before sleep claimed them. These rituals remained, steadfast and reassuring. Yet, there was an unmistakable shadow in his eyes, a depth of unspoken worry that seemed to ripple beneath the surface of his everyday composure. He would often gaze out the window, his expression distant, as if in silent anticipation of something, or perhaps someone. Anna, ever inclined to seek rational explanations, attributed this nascent disquiet to exhaustion, or the relentless pressures of his demanding work. Igor was deeply engrossed in a particularly important, high-stakes project, one she knew exacted a heavy toll on his energy and mental reserves. She made a conscious effort to envelop him in an even greater sphere of care and attentive solicitude, hoping, with a silent prayer, that her unwavering support would help him navigate the unseen struggles that gnawed at his peace. One crisp Saturday morning, Anna awoke with an unusual sensation stirring within her, a playful, almost childlike desire to orchestrate a surprise. A spontaneous impulse, born of affection and a yearning for an unexpected twist in their predictable routine, seized her. She decided then and there to drive to Igor's parents' house alone, without any prior warning. The thought of their surprised, delighted faces sparked a warmth in her chest. She yearned to visit them, to breathe the invigorating, clean air of the countryside, and to temporarily escape the relentless, grinding hustle of the city while Igor was engrossed in his work. With a quiet resolve, she slipped out of bed, her bare feet padding softly across the polished wooden floor. She made her way to the kitchen, a space that often hummed with the joyful activity of creation. Opening the refrigerator, its cool air a gentle caress, her gaze fell upon the neatly arranged jars of pickles, she had meticulously prepared just the previous week. They shimmered with vibrant colors, a testament to her culinary prowess. She carefully retrieved them, placing them with a soft clink on the clean countertop, and began the ritualistic process of packing a bag. To the pickles, she added a few golden, crusted apple pies, their sweet aroma already hinting at the delights within, a hearty portion of fragrant pilaf, and some richly spiced homemade sausage. She knew, with absolute certainty, that Igor's parents held a special fondness for these particular treats, their palates attuned to the nuanced flavors of her cooking. She envisioned their joyful expressions upon her arrival, their faces alight with surprise and genuine happiness. Their past visits, filled with effusive praise for her culinary skills and eager inquiries about her academic work, replayed in her mind like a cherished film. A gentle smile touched her lips. She adored creating surprises, deriving immense satisfaction from witnessing the sheer, unadulterated joy reflected in the eyes of others. Dressing for the trip, she chose comfortable, worn jeans and a warm, insulating jacket, a practical ensemble for the autumn weather. She glanced out the window. The sun, a pale disk in the sky, cast a deceptive warmth. Yet a chill wind hinted at the approaching winter. Deciding a scarf was a prudent addition, she wrapped a soft woolen one around her neck, grabbing the now laden bag of food, her car keys, and her small handbag. She stepped outside into the crisp morning air. Their old Neva, a reliable workhorse of a car, stood patiently parked by the entrance, its familiar contours a comforting sight. Anna opened the trunk with a soft click and meticulously loaded the bag, ensuring each precious jar and pie was securely nestled to prevent any breakage during the journey. Once satisfied, she slid into the driver's seat, the familiar scent of worn upholstery and old engine oil filling the small cabin. She turned the key, and the engine roared to life, a surprisingly vigorous rumble for such an aged vehicle. The Neva pulled away from the curb, a loyal companion embarking on a secret mission. Anna skillfully navigated out of the city's labyrinthine streets, leaving behind the incessant clamor and hurried pace. Soon the familiar ribbon of highway stretched before her, leading purposefully towards the tranquil village. She drove with a calm, unhurried grace, allowing her mind to wander as she absorbed the passing scenery. Fields of stubbled harvest, ancient, whispering forests, and wending rivers, their surfaces glinting under the pale sun. It all unfolded before her like a living landscape painting, imbued with a profound sense of beauty and serenity. The journey to the village, a pleasant 2-hour drive, felt less like travel and more like a gentle passage through a familiar dream. She tuned the radio to a station playing cheerful, upbeat songs, and soon, her voice, soft and tuneful, joined in the melodies, filling the car with an impromptu concert. A profound sense of happiness and unburdened freedom swelled within her chest. Along the way, she found herself lost in delightful daydreams, meticulously choreographing the moment of her arrival, picturing Igor's parents' joyful, surprised faces, imagining their heartfelt praises for her delicious food. Snippets of past conversations, the warm echoes of shared jokes over countless Sunday lunches, replayed in her mind, comforting and familiar. Just a couple of years prior, these cherished trips had invariably felt like an intrinsic, vital component of their family life, a small, yet profoundly significant ritual that consistently strengthened the intricate bonds between generations. She continued along the familiar, winding road, savoring the rich tapestry of the autumn landscape. The trees, now adorned in magnificent cloaks of gold, crimson, and russet, seemed to burn with an internal fire. The sunlight, diffused and softened, filtered through the rustling leaves, casting intricate, shifting patterns of light and shadow upon the asphalt below. Anna, seeking to deepen the serene ambience, switched the radio to a classical music station. The gentle strains of a cello, followed by the lilting melody of a piano, filled the car's interior, creating an atmosphere of profound peace and comforting tranquility. A sense of quiet anticipation hummed beneath the surface of her calm, a premonition that this day would be particularly special, suffused with an unusual warmth and an abundance of love. Never, in her wildest imaginings, could she have foreseen the devastating storm of emotions that lay coiled, waiting to unleash its fury upon her. As she drew nearer to the village, her heart began to quicken its rhythm, a drumbeat of rising excitement. She turned off the main road, onto the familiar dirt track that wound its way directly to Igor's parents' house. Despite not having visited in some time, the house immediately presented itself to her discerning eye, a small, charming wooden cottage, its windows adorned with intricately carved frames, its surrounding garden still bursting with a defiant riot of late-season flowers. Anna carefully parked her Neva by the weathered wooden gate, a sense of eager anticipation bubbling within her, as she stepped out, ready for the warm embrace of reunion. But what she saw, what unfolded before her eyes in that single, horrifying instant, caused her entire being to freeze. Time itself seemed to warp, stretching into an agonizing eternity. Standing on the modest porch, bathed in the soft autumn light, was Igor. And beside him, an unfamiliar woman, her face gentle, her eyes filled with an unmistakable warmth. Cradled securely in her arms was a child, a little boy, no older than 5, his hair the color of warm honey, his small form vibrant with life. Igor was speaking to the woman, his voice a low, tender murmur that didn't quite reach Anna's ears, and in response, the woman offered him a soft, affectionate smile. This was not merely a friendly encounter, Anna knew with a crushing certainty. This was something far, far deeper. There was an intimacy, a profound warmth, and an unutterable tenderness in their interaction. A quality that Anna hadn't seen reflected in Igor's eyes when he looked at her in what felt like an eternity. A visceral shock coursed through her, stealing the very breath from her lungs. She felt the solid ground beneath her feet give way, plunging her into an abyss of disbelief. Her head buzzed with a deafening roar, and her vision, once sharp, began to darken at the edges, blurring the edges of the horrifying scene before her. She tried to take a step forward, to articulate a sound, to call out Igor's name, to shatter the unbearable tableau, but her body refused to obey. Her voice, trapped in a strangled gasp, caught in her throat, refusing to emerge. She stood utterly paralyzed, a statue carved from despair, utterly unable to comprehend, much less believe, the devastating reality unfolding before her eyes. At that precise, agonizing moment, the little boy, with the boundless energy of childhood, wriggled free from the woman's arms. He ran, a blur of innocent motion, directly to Igor. He wrapped his small arms tightly around Igor's legs, looking up at him with wide, adoring eyes, a cascade of childish words tumbling from his lips. Igor, without hesitation, crouched down, meeting the boy at his level, and enveloped him in a tender, protective hug. He murmured something soft and comforting to the child, his large hand gently ruffling the boy's fair hair, and in that raw, unguarded instant, Anna saw it, a depth of love, a profound tenderness in Igor's eyes, a quality of affection that she had never witnessed, never felt directed towards herself. The revelation struck her like a physical blow. Shocked, reeling, Anna stumbled backward, her every fiber screaming in silent protest. The truth, brutal and undeniable, crashed down upon her. This was not a chance encounter, a fleeting dalliance, or a momentary lapse of judgment. This was Igor's severed other life, meticulously concealed from her, a carefully guarded secret that had festered in the shadows of their marriage. A woman, a child. This was his other family. The full, devastating weight of the deception settled upon her, crushing her spirit. Unable to bear the unbearable spectacle any longer, Anna turned blindly, a desperate animal fleeing a trap. She stumbled back to her car, her legs propelled by a frantic, primal urge to escape. She wrenched open the door, slammed it shut with a resounding thud that echoed the shattering of her heart, and fumbled for the keys, her trembling hands refusing to cooperate. With a desperate prayer, she managed to start the engine, its roar a painful counterpoint to the silent scream tearing through her soul. Tears hot and blinding welled in her eyes, blurring her vision, rendering the world a watery smear of despair. She ran the car around, tires spitting gravel, and surged back onto the dirt road, then onto the highway, her mind a blank slate of terror and confusion. She had no destination, no idea where she was going, what she would do. She drove blindly, heedlessly, tears streaming down her face, a torrent of grief and rage. One thought, singular and excruciating, pulsed relentlessly in her mind, hammering against her skull. How could he? How could he do this to me? She felt utterly betrayed, fundamentally deceived, and irrevocably broken into a million irreparable pieces. Everything she had believed in, the entire edifice of her meticulously constructed, seemingly happy life, crumbled into dust in that single, shattering instant. She recalled, with a searing clarity that twisted her gut, their first meeting, the giddy intoxication of their wedding day, the hopeful, shared plans they had so lovingly woven for a future that now seemed to vanish into thin air. It all felt like a monstrous lie now, a cruel, elaborate deception. A frantic, desperate question clawed at her. When had it started? When had Igor begun this insidious descent into deceit? Had she been so utterly blind, so profoundly naive, that she hadn't noticed a single sign, a solitary whisper of warning? Gradually, agonizingly, the raw, visceral shock began to recede, leaving in its wake a burning tide of hurt and an incandescent, consuming anger. Anna felt a cold, furious rage boiling deep within her, simmering like molten lava. She wanted to pivot the car around, to race back to that house, to confront Igor, to unleash the full, devastating force of her fury and articulate precisely what she thought of him, to tear down the facade he had so carefully built. But simultaneously, a paralyzing fear seized her, fear of hearing the unvarnished truth, fear that all her burgeoning, horrifying suspicions would be confirmed, transforming a nightmare into an irreversible reality. Memories, once seemingly insignificant fragments, now flashed through her mind with a terrifying clarity, each one taking on a monstrous, new meaning. His increasingly frequent, extended trips to his parents' village, his unusually late returns, often accompanied by a vague tiredness, his recent, subtle detachment, a faint emotional distance she had unconsciously registered but dismissed. It all coalesced into a single, horrific, and exquisitely painful picture, a mosaic of deceit that had been painstakingly assembled right under her unsuspecting nose. Unable to continue, her body trembling uncontrollably, Anna pulled over to the side of the deserted road. She buried her face in her trembling hands, seeking a meager refuge from the onslaught of her emotions. Deep, wrenching sobs tore through her, uncontrollable and ragged, refusing to be stifled. It felt as though her heart had not merely broken, but shattered into 1,000 jagged pieces, scattered beyond redemption, destined never to be whole again. She sat there for an immeasurable stretch of time, lost in the depths of her despair, until the wellspring of her tears finally ran dry, and the initial ferocity of her anger began to subside, leaving behind a hollow ache. A single, stark thought slowly, painfully, emerged from the emotional wreckage. What now? She knew, with an agonizing certainty, that she couldn't simply dismiss this, couldn't pretend that nothing had happened, couldn't sweep this monumental betrayal under the rug of their shared life. She needed to unearth the truth, to comprehend the full, intricate tapestry of what lay behind it all. Gathering every last vestige of her shattered strength, Anna started the car once more and drove slowly, deliberately, back towards the city. She made a conscious, difficult decision. She wouldn't make a scene, wouldn't scream or hurl accusations in a fit of rage. She would strive for a semblance of calm. She would attempt to listen to Igor's explanation. She needed to understand, truly understand, what had transpired before she could begin to contemplate any future decisions. The drive home felt interminable, each mile stretching into an eternity. Anna drove in a profound, heavy silence, lost in the turbulent currents of her thoughts. She tried, with a chilling detachment, to mentally rehearse how their inevitable conversation would unfold. What words would Igor choose? What could he possibly say to explain this? And what, in her profound state of shock and pain, would she be able to articulate? She knew, with a certainty that chilled her to the bone, that it would be the hardest, most gut-wrenching conversation of her entire life. But in the end, Anna, with a surprising surge of her inherent intellectual curiosity and a protective instinct for her own emotional survival, chose a profoundly different approach. A few days later, her initial shock, having somewhat receded into a dull throb of pain, she returned to the village. This time, however, she arrived not as a heartbroken, betrayed wife, but in the guise of a casual acquaintance, a detached observer. She imagined herself as an anthropologist, embarking on an academic expedition to study a peculiar, deeply complex tribe, one she now ironically dubbed family. She mustered every ounce of her depleted strength to concoct a plausible story, a flimsy veil behind which to conduct her painful investigation. She was, she would claim, ostensibly interested in local architecture, particularly the charming, aged houses that dotted the rural landscape. It was a silly, almost absurd fabrication, she knew, but it was something, a fragile shield against the raw vulnerability of her heart. This time she wouldn't hide. This time, she wouldn't allow herself to be blind. She parked her car discreetly by the roadside, took a deep, fortifying breath, and began to walk towards the familiar house. Her heart hammered against her ribs with such an insistent, deafening rhythm that it seemed the entire quiet street must surely hear it. As she approached the gate, a figure emerged from the house and stood there. It was the woman Alina, the one she had seen with Igor just days before. "Hello," Anna said, her voice surprisingly steady, a testament to her profound self-control. "I heard you have a very interesting house. I'm researching local historical architecture." Alina looked at her closely, her gaze searching, unblinking. There was no trace of hostility in her eyes, no spark of surprise, only a quiet, almost resigned wariness. "Come in," Elena said, her voice soft, as she opened the gate with a creak. "I'm Elena." Anna, extending her hand, offered the fabricated name. "Irina," she replied, her voice a careful mask of casual politeness. They entered the house. Inside, it was spotlessly clean and simply furnished, possessing an understated charm. The air was filled with a comforting medley of scents, the faint aroma of freshly baked bread still clinging to the air, mingling with the distinct, sweet fragrance of baby formula. In a sunlit corner of the room, a little boy, Sasha, was engrossed in his play, his small body a whirl of absorbed motion. "Sasha," Elena introduced him, her voice softening perceptibly as she looked at her son. "This is Sasha." The boy looked up, his wide, curious eyes meeting Anna's gaze. He observed her with an innocent scrutiny, but made no move to approach. "Nice to meet you, Sasha," Anna managed, her voice carefully neutral, trying desperately not to stare at him too intently, to betray the torrent of emotions raging within her. They settled at the kitchen table, a simple wooden surface worn smooth by years of use. Elena, with an intuitive understanding, offered tea, and Anna, grateful for the distraction, accepted. In the heavy silence that followed, broken only by the gentle pouring of boiling water into the ceramic cups, Anna meticulously studied Elena. There was nothing extraordinary about her, no dramatic allure, no striking beauty. Just an ordinary woman, perhaps a little tired, her face etched with the quiet responsibilities of motherhood, but with eyes that held a profound kindness. Not a femme fatale, not a homewrecker, but simply a mother. "Have you lived here long?" Anna asked, making a concerted effort to keep the conversation flowing, to maintain the fragile illusion of casual inquiry. A couple of years. Elena replied, her gaze distant for a moment. Then, with a quiet directness that stunned Anna, she added, "And Igor. He comes often." Anna's breath hitched in her throat. "What?" she managed, her voice barely a whisper. "How do you know?" Elena set the steaming cups on the table, her movements deliberate. "He comes every Sunday," she explained, her voice even, devoid of any accusatory tone. "He helps with chores. He helps me and Sasha." A thick lump formed in Anna's throat, making it difficult to swallow. The air in the small kitchen suddenly felt impossibly heavy. "I saw you with him a few days ago," Anna confessed, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. "I'm his wife." Elena was silent for a long moment, her eyes fixed on Anna's face. There was a strange understanding in her gaze, an almost preternatural empathy that transcended the immediate shock. "I see," she said finally, her voice imbued with a quiet resignation. "Igor didn't tell you?" "No, I had no idea." The silence descended once more, thick and suffocating. The only sound was the rhythmic, relentless ticking of the clock on the wall, each second stretching into an eternity, mocking Anna's fragile composure. Anna felt as though she were suspended in a critical examination, a life-altering test where a single question had been posed, and her entire future hung precariously on the answer. "Why?" Anna asked, her voice cracking, finally shattering the oppressive silence. "Why didn't he tell me?" "You'd have to ask him," Elena replied, her gaze softening. "But I think he was afraid. Afraid of losing you. Afraid of everything unraveling. And you." Anna pressed, her voice barely audible. "Do you love him?" Elena offered a sad, wistful smile, a fragile bloom of sorrow. "I loved him once," she confessed, her voice imbued with a deep, distant ache. "Deeply. But that was a long time ago. Now we just share responsibility for Sasha, nothing more. Igor comes as a father, as a friend, but not as a man. There's nothing romantic between us anymore." Anna wasn't sure whether to believe her, her mind reeling with doubt and confusion. Yet, Elena's voice carried such an undeniable sincerity, such a raw, quiet honesty. That skepticism seemed almost unwarranted, a cynical stain on a moment of pure truth. "And he," Elena added, her eyes softening as she looked at her son, now happily pushing a toy car across the floor, "loves Sasha more than life itself. He's a wonderful father, always caring for him, always helping. Sasha adores him." Anna turned her gaze to the boy. He was still absorbed in his play, humming a soft, tuneless melody to himself. Suddenly he looked up, his innocent eyes meeting Anna's. There was no fear or hostility in his gaze, only a boundless, unclouded curiosity. Anna, surprising herself, offered him a small, tentative smile. The boy, in turn, returned a shy, sweet smile, a flicker of pure, unadulterated innocence in the midst of Anna's storm. "And Igor?" Anna asked, her voice barely a whisper, looking away from the boy, a new question forming in her mind. "Is he happy?" Elena sighed, a sound heavy with unspoken burdens. "I don't know," she admitted, her voice tinged with a profound sadness. "It's hard for him. He's torn between two lives, two worlds that he tries desperately to keep separate. He wants to be honest, but he can't. He's afraid of hurting you. And he's terrified of losing Sasha. And what about me?" Anna retorted, a sudden surge of pain in her voice. "Doesn't he think about how much this hurts me?" "He does," Elena confirmed, her voice gentle. "But he hoped you'd never find out. He hoped he could keep this secret forever." "Knave," Anna whispered, a bitter taste on her tongue. "Maybe," Elena conceded. "But he didn't do it out of malice. He was just trying to do right by everyone. Trying to protect everyone." Anna's mind raced, grappling with the profound moral questions Elena's words raised. Is it right to lie for years, to meticulously hide the truth, to live a double life, all under the guise of doing right? Is that truly right? Or is it merely profound cowardice, a tragic inability to face difficult truths? "Why are you telling me all this?" she asked, her gaze piercing, seeking to find the deepest motivations in Elena's eyes. Because I see you're in pain. Elena replied, her voice unwavering. And because I want you to know the truth. Igor is a good man, Anna. He doesn't deserve to be hated. He's just lost, caught in a trap of his own making. Aren't you afraid I'll take him away from you? Anna challenged, testing the limits of Elena's composure. Elena shook her head slowly, a faint, melancholic smile on her lips. No, she said, her voice steady and resolute. I know you won't. And even if you did, I wouldn't hold him by force. The main thing is that Sasha is happy. The rest will follow, whatever it may be. Anna fell silent, the weight of Elena's words settling deep within her. Can happiness truly be built on a foundation of deception, on years of elaborate lies? She didn't know. She felt too powerful. Opposing emotions battling fiercely within her heart, a searing anger and a nascent understanding, a deep, pervasive hurt and a fragile, tentative urge towards forgiveness. Thank you, she said, rising slowly from the table, her limbs stiff. Thank you for the tea, and for the truth. You're welcome, Elena replied, her gaze warm and compassionate. If you want to talk, I'm always here. Anna left the house, stepping back into the fresh autumn air and the bright, indifferent sun. But her heart remained dark and troubled, a storm of unresolved emotions raging within her. She got into her car and drove home, her mind a churning vortex of thoughts. She needed time, precious time alone, to process the raw, brutal truth, to somehow piece together the shattered fragments of her world, and to figure out what, if anything, she could possibly do next. At home, Igor was waiting. He sat on the couch, his head bowed, his shoulders slumped in an attitude of profound dejection and silent agony. The moment he saw Anna enter, a flicker of desperate hope mixed with paralyzing fear ignited in his eyes. He slowly rose to his feet. Where were you? He asked, his voice hoarse, barely above a whisper. Anna looked at him, truly looked at him, seeing the raw vulnerability, the naked fear, and the glimmer of fragile hope in his gaze. I was with Elena, she replied, her voice calm, utterly devoid of the accusation he so clearly expected. Igor's face paled further, draining of all color. But he didn't deny anything. The dam had broken. He began to speak, haltingly at first, then in a torrent of tormented words, as if justifying himself not just to Anna, but to his own conscience. He spoke of Elena, of their brief, intense romance just before he had met Anna. He spoke of Sasha's unexpected birth, the profound shock, and the unyielding sense of paternal responsibility that had seized him. He described, in agonizing detail, how he simply couldn't abandon his child, how the thought tore at his very soul. He confessed his paralyzing fear of telling Anna, the terror of losing her, of shattering the beautiful life they had painstakingly built together. I knew I was being despicable, he admitted, his head bowed once more, shame radiating from him in waves. I lied to you, Anna, I know. But I didn't see another way. I didn't want to hurt you. Anya, I swear, I never stopped loving you, not for a single moment. Anna remained silent, her face a mask of careful neutrality. She simply looked at him, her gaze unwavering, searching for the raw, unvarnished truth in his eyes. Past the layers of fear and regret, she saw remorse, yes, a profound, gut-wrenching pain. But she also saw a stubborn, unyielding resolve, a conviction born of deeply ingrained responsibility. He had made his choice, she realized long ago, and it wasn't just about him anymore. It was about a child, a silent, innocent presence that had unknowingly shaped the course of their lives. The night that followed passed in a suffocating, unbearable silence. They lay on their respective sides of the bed, a vast, invisible chasm stretched between them, wider and more terrifying than any physical distance. Anna couldn't sleep. Her mind swirled, a chaotic vortex of fragmented thoughts, echoes of phrases, and vivid, painful memories. She recalled the entirety of their shared life, the fierce, unwavering love they had built, the hopeful, ambitious plans they had so carefully laid for a future that now seemed to shimmer with an unbearable fragility, utterly unreal. She didn't know what she felt anymore. The emotions a confused jumble: anger, profound hurt, bitter disappointment, or perhaps something far more complex, more nuanced, and deeply profound that defied easy categorization. In the morning, Igor left for work. His departure leaving Anna utterly alone in the quiet apartment, a hollow echo of its former self. She wandered through the rooms like a ghost, an ethereal presence adrift in a space that suddenly felt alien, unfamiliar, imbued with the oppressive weight of deceit. Even the beloved books on her shelves, those steadfast companions she cherished so dearly, now seemed to mock her, their grand narratives of truth and consequence, suddenly appearing false, hypocritical in the face of her own shattered reality. She stood by the window, gazing out at the world below. It continued on, oblivious and indifferent, as if nothing had happened, as if her entire universe hadn't just collapsed. People rushed to work, their lives unfolding with predictable purpose. Children played in the sun-drenched yard, their innocent laughter echoing up to her window. Birds sang cheerful melodies in the trees, their songs a cruel counterpoint to the discordant chaos within her. Her life, the solid, dependable edifice she had built, had crumbled in an instant. She remembered Elena's words, replaying them in her mind, searching for meaning, for a lifeline. Elena's steady pronouncements about Igor being a good father, about his profound care for Sasha, about how there was nothing romantic left between them, only the shared, unwavering burden of responsibility. Anna wasn't entirely sure whether to believe Elena, her analytical mind still grappling with the sheer audacity of Igor's deception. Yet, something in Elena's calm, wary-voiced, something in the honest, compassionate depth of her gaze, suggested she was indeed telling the truth. Anna knew, with an agonizing clarity, that she needed time. Time to think, to process, to meticulously weigh the agonizing choices before her, to somehow arrive at a decision that wouldn't utterly destroy her. She couldn't simply forgive Igor, not immediately, not without true understanding and profound effort. But she also realized, with a heavy heart, that she couldn't just leave him either. Too much bound them together. Too many years of shared laughter, quiet comfort, and profound connection. Too much had been invested, too much of her heart woven into the very fabric of their relationship, to simply sever the ties. The next day, Anna, her voice firm despite the tremble in her soul, told Igor that she needed to leave, to be alone, to process everything, to think things through in the quiet solitude she so desperately craved. Igor, his face etched with pain and understanding, didn't try to stop her. He knew she had that right, that this was a path she needed to walk alone. Anna drove not to Igor's parents' village, which was now irrevocably tainted by her discovery, but to an old, secluded dacha she owned, a small cottage nestled deep in the countryside. She spent several days there, days that blurred into an indistinguishable haze of introspection. She walked for hours in the ancient forest, the rustling leaves a gentle balm to her agitated spirit. She sought solace in books, losing herself in their narratives, but even they offered only a temporary reprieve from the relentless churning of her own mind. She reflected deeply, painfully, on her life, on the trajectory that had led her to this shattering crossroads. She recalled their first meeting, the spark of recognition, the burgeoning love that had blossomed between them. Their wedding day, a joyful celebration of promises. Their early years together, filled with such profound goodness, such comforting calm, such reassuring reliability. Could it all have been a lie? Had Igor truly been living a double life all these years, a meticulous deception unfolding right beneath her unsuspecting nose? Anna, despite the overwhelming evidence, simply couldn't bring herself to believe it of him. She knew Igor intimately as an honest, fundamentally decent man. How could he have inflicted such a profound wound upon her? But then, as the days wore on, she remembered Elena's words with renewed clarity, how Igor didn't want to hurt her, how he feared losing her, how he did it all for Sasha, out of an overwhelming sense of paternal duty. And gradually, painstakingly, Anna began to understand. She realized that Igor hadn't cheated on her in the traditional sense of seeking illicit thrills or romantic liaisons on the side. He wasn't a philanderer. He was simply fulfilling his duty as a father, a sacred, unyielding responsibility that had, in his mind, demanded this monumental sacrifice of truth. Yet, even with this dawning understanding, his actions were no less painful. He had still betrayed her, profoundly deceived her, and, perhaps most agonizingly, denied her the fundamental right to know the truth about her own life, about the man she loved. Anna knew, with a heavy, aching heart, that she had to decide what to do next. She could leave Igor, sever all ties, and attempt to forge a new life, alone, unburdened by his secret. She could try to forgive him superficially, to simply live as if nothing had happened, to paper over the cracks with a thin veneer of normalcy. Or, and this was the most daunting prospect, she could try to truly understand him, to grasp the profound, complex motivations that had driven him to make this agonizing choice, to comprehend how he had lived with this crushing burden of secrecy all these years. She knew, with unwavering certainty, that this third path wouldn't be easy. It would demand an almost superhuman effort, requiring her to overcome her pride, to transcend her deep-seated pain, to conquer the burning sting of her hurt. She would have to accept that Igor wasn't the flawless, idealized man she had once believed him to be, that he had weaknesses, flaws, and indeed, profound secrets. But if she truly, deeply wanted to save their family, if she genuinely loved Igor, in all his flawed humanity, she would have to do it. One morning, Anna woke with a new, quiet determination. A firm decision had solidified within her, like bedrock forming after a storm. She knew, with an absolute clarity, what she had to do. She packed her few belongings, leaving the Dutch behind, and drove back to the city, her heart resolute. Igor was waiting for her. He sat on the couch, just as she had left him, his head bowed, his entire posture exuding an aura of profound anxiety and silent penance. When Anna walked into the apartment, the subtle shift in the air signaling her return, he slowly looked up. His eyes, dark and shadowed, held such an agonizing mix of raw pain and desperate hope that Anna's heart ached in response, a sympathetic tremor passing through her. "I know everything," Anna said, her voice calm, devoid of accusation, yet resonating with an undeniable authority. "I understand." Igor was silent, utterly still, his breath hitched in his throat, waiting with bated breath for her to continue, for the pronouncement of his fate. "I've decided." Anna said, her gaze steady, meeting his without flinching. "I'm staying." Igor, as if a great weight had been lifted from his shoulders, stood up slowly, tentatively, and then, with a surge of profound relief, he walked towards her. He enveloped her in a tight, desperate hug, his arms trembling around her. "Thank you," he whispered into her hair, his voice choked with emotion. "Thank you for everything." Anna gently pulled back, creating a small, necessary space between them. "But that doesn't mean I've forgotten," she clarified, her voice soft but firm. "It doesn't mean I've forgiven, not yet, not fully. We'll need to work incredibly hard to rebuild trust. We'll need to learn to live differently, to navigate this new, complex reality together." Igor nodded, his eyes filled with gratitude and renewed determination. He knew she was right. "I'm ready for anything," he said, his voice firm with commitment. "As long as you're by my side." Anna offered him a small, tender smile, a flicker of the old warmth returning to her eyes. "Then let's go," she said, her voice a quiet challenge, a subtle invitation, to the village. Igor looked at her surprised, a flicker of confusion in his eyes. "To Elena and Sasha?" he asked, his voice hesitant, as if daring to hope. "Yes," Anna replied, her resolve unwavering. "I want to meet them. Properly." Igor was silent for a long moment, processing the profound implications of her statement, the monumental step she was offering to take. Then a slow, understanding nod. "All right," he said, his voice filled with a new, fragile hope. "Let's go." The very next morning, Anna and Igor embarked on the drive to the village together, a journey imbued with an entirely new, weighty significance. In the trunk of the Neva, Anna had placed a large bag filled with homemade pastries, lovingly prepared especially for Alina and Sasha. It was a tangible offering, a silent gesture intended to convey that she held no lasting grudge, that she was ready, in her heart, to tentatively accept them into the intricate tapestry of her life. As they approached Elena's house, a wave of familiar nervousness washed over Anna. She didn't know how she would be received, what to say, or how to navigate this entirely unprecedented situation. But then, Alina emerged from the house, her face alight with a warm, genuine smile. "I knew you'd come," she said softly, her eyes meeting Anna's with a depth of understanding that transcended words. At that moment, Sasha, sensing the new arrivals, darted out from behind Elena, his small form peeking out, his eyes wide with a curious innocence, as he peered at Anna. "This is Anna," Elena said gently to Sasha, her voice kind and reassuring. "She's Igor's wife." Sasha, after a moment of careful observation, peeked out further from behind Elena's legs, and then, slowly, a shy, sweet smile bloomed on his face. "Hey," he said, his voice a soft, childish murmur. Anna smiled back, her heart swelling with an unexpected warmth. "Hi, Sasha," she replied, her voice gentle. "I brought you a treat." She walked to the trunk, opened it, and carefully retrieved the bag of pastries, extending it towards Alina. "This is for you," she said, her voice infused with a quiet sincerity. "I hope you like it." Elena took the bag, her smile deepening, her eyes conveying a profound gratitude. "Thank you," she said softly. "Come inside. I'll put the kettle on." Anna and Igor stepped inside the small, welcoming house, Sasha following close behind. They sat at the familiar kitchen table, the air filled with the comforting aroma of freshly brewed tea. They spoke, tentatively at first, then with increasing ease, about everything and nothing: the changing weather, the children's simple joys, the quiet rhythms of village life. Anna felt a strange, complex mix of emotions swirling within her. On one hand, there was still an undeniable uneasiness, a profound discomfort born of the raw, recent wounds. But on the other, an overwhelming sense of relief washed over her, a quiet certainty that she was, at long last, making the right choice, taking the first, courageous steps towards healing and forging a new, perhaps unconventional, but ultimately whole, future.